Hi, I'm Logan Porter, and despite the fact that we can't hold an assembly this year due to COVID-19 restrictions, me and the rest of the Sociology class still wanted to make a video to commemorate our veterans. In today's program, we're going to have a student performance and guest interviews, but first let's look at a brief history of Veterans Day. World War I ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, but the fighting had stopped 7 months prior to that when an armistice between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect. An armistice is basically just a temporary cessation of hostilities. This particular armistice went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Because of this, November 11th, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. Later on in 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. He dedicated this day to the heroism of those who died in service, to the gratitude of victory, and to the freedom and opportunity it gave America to show peace and justice to other nations. By 1938, Congress made it a legal holiday. After World War II and the Korean War, the holiday was changed not just to honor World War I veterans, but all veterans. In 1954, President Eisenhower, who was also a World War II veteran, renamed the holiday to Veterans Day, honoring those who served in all American wars. Almost 2 decades later, Congress moved the holiday to October, but the November 11th anniversary of the Great War ceasefire was too historic to change, and it was moved back to its original date by President Ford in 1975. Today's Veterans Day is celebrated not only to honor those who have fought in battle, but also those who have served us in peacetime. Now here for this next part is Shenandoah student Faith Worstell with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched with so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now for this next bit, we decided to ask random students what Veterans Day meant to them. What does Veterans Day mean to you?
You celebrating anyone who fought for our country.
The people that fought for our country.
The people who fought for our country.
What does Veterans Day mean to you?
Veterans Day means that we get to honor those who have helped our country
Like everyone who's served for our country.
by fighting for
Our freedoms.
and our rights, and by celebrating the lives of those who have lived for our country.
What does Veterans Day mean to you?
Veterans Day is the respect.
Respect and to say thank you.
Respecting and honoring those who have served our country.
The people that have served or are serving in the military.
To me, Veterans Day probably means like honoring everyone that has given us the freedoms that we have today.
To me, Veterans Day is a day that we come together as a community to celebrate those who have served and sacrificed for our country.
And then we did teachers as well.
Veterans Day to me means honoring and giving thanks to our veterans who have served our country to protect our freedoms.
Veterans Day to me means respectfulness, thankfulness, being appreciative of all of those who have served our country to help protect our freedoms.
My father was in World War II, and my husband fought in Vietnam. So Veterans Day and anything patriotic is very important to me.
One, ready, go.
This is Mr. Gene Hill, and I chose him to interview for our Veterans Day program, and I'm going to ask him a few questions. What branch did you serve in?
United States Navy from 1971 to 1975.
What years did you serve?
Well, in the early 1970s, actually, I got my draft notice from the United States Army in December of 1970, and my father was a recruiter for the Navy in northeastern Ohio, so I decided to join the Navy because of my family's background in the Navy, and I signed up in March of my senior year in high school.
What made you want to join the armed forces?
Well, it was a very interesting time in American history. It was at the height of the Vietnam War. It was pretty obvious that people in my age group and the young men of the United States were actively involved in some way in service to their country.
When you joined the military, what was the environment like?
Well, it was very much like it is today. The country was pretty well split down the middle, those for the war and those against. The president at that time was President Richard Nixon, a Republican, and he had begun to start peace talks with the country of North Vietnam, who were a communist nation, but at that time we did not have a peace treaty in place.
What was your main jobs after basic training?
Well, I went to school in the Navy. They call it A School, and that was in Lakehurst, New Jersey, and my job formally was called Air Crew Equipment Man. The job task included all air crew survival, everything that a sailor needs to survive in a crash over sea and over water.
What events were taking place during your time in service?
Besides the Vietnam War, I also was married at that time, and we lived in California. I attended night classes, preparing to being a teacher after my service, which ended in October of 1975. And at that time I was honorably discharged and left San Francisco on my 380 Suzuki and headed to Kent State to start my college training.
What was the hardest part for you about being in the military?
Well, I think the separation from family is the toughest thing. The squadron I belonged to was deployed from 6 to 8 months in Southeast Asia. We were stationed in the American territory of Guam, on the Philippine Islands, in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, and also in Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam.
What rank, medals, or honors did you earn during your time in service?
Well, I was a parachute rigger 3rd class. That's a 3rd class petty officer, and I attained the normal medals associated with the Vietnam conflict, the Good Service Medal, etc. I was also awarded a commendation for being part of a crew that rescued a father and son who were lost at sea for over 4 days. And that was one of our missions in helping civilians sea and rescue service in the South Pacific.
Why do you believe Veterans Day is an important day to celebrate?
Well, it's been a national holiday for well over 100 years. It was established at the end of World War I. I think it's always important that we remember those who give service, but also as a teaching tool for our young Americans as well. Sometimes I don't think we do enough in that area to educate our children as to the sacrifice and the cost of freedom. And here on Election Day, I think it's appropriate to remind our youth that the very act of voting, the responsibility and duty that we have as American citizens is not something that is guaranteed anywhere in the world. And at this time, when there is a great deal of divisiveness in our own nation, I think it's proper and appropriate that we're reminded of that.
Last question, what advice would you give to someone wanting to go into the military?
I think very seriously about before you do, because it's a big responsibility. It's also I think something that if you do serve, you'll find it rewarding, and some of the reasons that you'll find it rewarding you might not even be aware of until you're much older, because as I get older, I think back on my service time that was over 40 years ago, and I look back at it as a time where I made many good friends. I learned to appreciate the actual responsibilities of being an American citizen, and I also look back with no regrets.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
As you now know, Veterans Day is an important day because it's the time we honor veterans who have served for our freedom. We greatly appreciate everyone who participated in the creation of this video. I want to give a special thanks to the veteran Jean Hill for taking this time to be in this video. Also, a special thanks to Sierra Perkins for singing the national anthem. And thank you all for watching.